Entry 01. Hello, my name is Astro-Drifter. I'm sorry to say that we still have some catching up to do, but by the end of this entry, we will all be on the same page. So, starting where we left off in the last entry, I ended my Twitch stream in January of this year and dived back into online courses revolving around game development. I started with two specific classes that I'd like to share. The first one was about shaders. For those who don't know, a shader is what's responsible for how things in a 3D space react with light and appear the way that they do. And this course was fantastic. I learned more from this course than I could have ever hoped to, and yet I've still only scratched the surface. I managed to create a few awesome things. Check them out. Now, some of these were personal experiments, but I wouldn't have been able to create any of them without the lessons from this course. And the final project we put together was a sewer scene with gross, discolored water that also moved and reacted to things that it came in contact with. It was a lot to put together, and I'll definitely be using it as a reference as I move forward. I wanted to give a personal shout out to Penny from Holistic 3D for being an amazing instructor. Penny or any of the awesome staff from Holistic 3D, you guys are badasses, so keep the content coming. For anyone who's interested, I've included links to their social media pages and website in the description below. This class took me about a month. I probably would have finished it faster if I wasn't trying to do two at once. Speaking of which, now I have to talk about the other course. My other course was literally about making a survival horror game, which sounds perfect. However, after getting about 25 hours deep into this course, I can say that the coding practices that are being recommended are just bad. It's code like this that keeps professional programmers awake at night. For any professional programmers listening, imagine if across an entire project, all of your classes almost always had some sort of field for everything. Caches for everything. Duplicates of those caches for everything. Imagine if statements for everything. No switches, no fors, no whiles, no do-whiles, and certainly no arrays. No lists, no dictionaries, no inheritance, no structures, no constructors, and even no overloads. Only variables, for as far as the eye can see, inside an endless number of if statements. And I mean only if statements. I mean, just look at this. For those who are not program savvy, or code savvy, Imagine if you were trying to build a birdhouse. However, instead of using glue, you use nails. For everything, including the wood. That's sort of what this code looks like. Now, I am aware that this course is labeled as for beginners. I am aware of the fact that this course is not supposed to utilize advanced or intermediate coding practices. This is supposed to get your feet wet. This is supposed to be for the person who's never done this before. And of course, that's all well and good. However, for someone who doesn't know any better, they're going to be in for a rude awakening when they find out that this massive course they've taken is practically useless when it comes to making an actual application or program. They're not going to know what they're doing is wrong, and that's the problem. So what I'm getting at here is, if you're going to teach somebody the basics, if you're going to do a beginner course, you've got to make sure that you're instilling good habits. Simple habits, but good ones all the same. You have to make sure that you're careful about that. Otherwise, you could lead somebody down a very difficult and even potentially painful path. Now, I want to make this clear. I mean no disrespect to this instructor. Teaching a course, let alone one that's 52 hours long, and about making a video game from scratch, is hard. I admire the instructor for even attempting to make such a massive course. While the coding portions are questionable at best, the game does work, and I did learn a lot about doing other things in Unity, like animations and prefabs, culling, UI, AI, saving, and a lot of other things. Not to mention that the course has been very easy to follow, and the resources provided have been very useful. The instructor is even responsive in the Q&A section, which I have a massive appreciation for. Answering questions is exhausting. But this code thing just can't be excused. So, 2 to 3 weeks ago, I put this course on pause and looked for other ways to improve my C# skills. This led me to a free course provided directly from Unity called Intermediate Scripting. For the record, I've tried to use the Unity brand courses before, and I'm never satisfied by the end. If you're new to a subject, they tend to leave you with a lot of questions and few to no ways of actually applying what you learned to a real-world application. In some cases, they even give you conflicting information about how certain things are used, which sucks considering that the company that owns the game engine should really have the final say in how to use the software that they publish. This is my review based on personal experiences, so for some of these courses, there may still be a case, and they may still be incredibly helpful for someone. But typically, for me, they aren't. Yet. Now, despite this fact, I took on the course anyway, and with the help of W3 Schools and a YouTube channel known as Code Monkey, I managed to get through intermediate scripting in about 2 days. And oh boy, did it open one hellish can of worms. Delegates, inheritance, interfaces, properties, events, overloading, overriding, attributes, namespaces, and so much more. All these wonderful things that I've never heard of before. So many possibilities, so much potential, so many ways to get lost and confused. This grind was very bittersweet. I had no way of knowing when and how to actually apply these practices. So what did I do next? I did the unthinkable. The absolute last thing you would ever expect. I bought a book. I thought a published book that I could reference on the fly would help me absorb the content from that Unity course. But unfortunately, that has only somewhat been the case. There's a reason they call this stuff intermediate after all. So, I spent days going back and forth from my notes, to the book, to the course, to online resources, and to the practice that I was doing with Unity. There are still a few things that I'm struggling to find ways to use, but I'm hoping as progress moves onwards that I will find ways to implement these tools. But I figured it was time to make sure that I was using these things correctly. So on March 11th, I found another course on Udemy. This one covers what's called design patterns. It covers exactly what I want to learn: the how and the when. How to use all these new practices and tools. How to, and not to, write good code. How to avoid bad habits. When to use certain things and when to use other things. This course has already been extremely helpful with straightening some things out. However, despite this particular one only being a mere 14 hours long, I can already tell this one is going to be tough. I'm going to be doing a lot of revisiting, a lot of rewinding, and a lot of note-taking. You might be asking, so what happens after that course? Well, remember that survival horror course from earlier? You know, the one that led me down this crazy rabbit hole? Well, my plan is to return to it and use all these new techniques to rebuild it. Since all of the resources are good, I can't see a reason not to revisit the game and see if I can't turbocharge it with a code that doesn't induce hemorrhoids just by reading it. And what about Project Peel? Well, as of current, nothing. Nothing is happening with Project Peel directly. However, I think that we will soon start to see some of these newfound things find their way into the project. Only time will tell. What I can say is that you have my word that once I am able to start sharing beautiful bugs, horrifying glitches, and behind-the-scenes content, you will have it. But until then, thank you so much for tuning in to this entry of Astro's Dev Log. This is Astro-Drifter, signing off.